pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Tabarnak! Jeez! By a touchdown? Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Monday, April 1st. And no, it's not a joke. That's the word of the weekend for me, Duane. Tabarnak. It's my reaction. It's my reaction on Saturday's game.
That's for those that don't know, which I don't know, it's too many. That is a very bad word in the French language.
Well, in the French language, it's specifically a bad word for French Canadians, for people in Quebec, because like you go France, you say that word, and people are like, what are you saying? What are you saying? It's like it's just like an object from church. But for us here in Quebec, tabarnak, it's like it's visceral. It gets the emotion out of you. It gets the energy, and it gets your frustration out. So, yeah, tabarnak.
Well, at least you got the late rouge to make it 7-1.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the behind if it was Australian football with the little move.
Yeah.
Here. Oh, what a weekend in MLS. Welcome to Soccer Today. I'm Kevin Laramee, joined by Duane Rollins as always. And Duane, okay, let's start with Friday. Friday was a fascinating game to watch. I'm not going to lie. Like, Pozuelo. Yeah, what a debut. 40 points. Like, if you had him in your fantasy, Duane, no, not even a captain. He made 40 points in your fantasy team for Friday night. If you did put Pozuelo on your team, 2 goals, an assist, 4 offsides, a performance that reassured every TFC fan. Duane, is it the type of performance where people will be, where were you when he chipped Sean Johnson? Where were you?
Well, I was in section 113 is where I was. Yeah, look, I mean, the Panenka to me was just as audacious because this is a team that has a terrible record of penalties. He walks up and goes, no, I'm just going to do this little cheeky thing here.
And he called it. And, he called it to Bill Manning the week before. For me, that's a funny story in that. Christian Jack mentioned talking to Pozuelo after the game. He's like, that Panenka, sir. And Pozuelo was like, well, when I had a meeting with Bill Manning last week, I said, if I have a penalty, I'm going to do a Panenka just to give you a little flair on my debut. But the Panenka, the chip, the pass to Josie, like Pozuelo, maybe best player in MLS this year so far after one game.
Look, the NYCFC, the Pigeons, Pizza Rats, they did not look good at all. That was one of the, but I don't know, we were talking about it after the game, whether that was a completely dominating, like purring performance by TFC or whether that was just a team that lied down and, exposed their belly to be pet. I don't know. Like that, it wasn't much being put back on there, but certainly Pozuelo is, look, they will adjust to him. The league will. They will have seen this video and go, okay, we're going to need to adjust this because this is a different kind of player for this league. He's not Javinko, but he's, well, at least one game is to prove anything. He's every bit as impactful as he might be, just in a different way. He's Viesta. He's a playmaker, right? And that's what I saw when I saw him in Belgium in those games. My eyes like went wide open like pancakes when I first saw him play over there. And it was, you weren't quite sure whether it would immediately translate, but the way he can, it's the way he can scoop a ball. And that was really what I noticed in Belgium again, is that he has this innate ability to, like we saw with the chip, to just scoop the ball into a perfect place. That's something that, especially when you have a guy like Josie running onto these balls, could be very, very dangerous for TFC. 3 points, or 3 games, 3 wins, though, to start the season. And after the game, Greg Vanny was very much trying to refocus it away from Pozuelo a little bit and onto the overall team performance. But it's hard to not talk about, well, what was Luke Wildman's call? Toronto FC has a new hero. Was what he said. So,
Luke Wildman, he's good at those one-liner off the top of his head. And I just remember, like, the all-Canadian affair a few years ago when he was talking about a Montreal and Toronto game. And for me, it's just like it was in our earlier intro music long time ago, before we were so popular that we would get like red flag with copyrights. Now I can't do those things. But Luke Wildman used to be like, "Oh, the all-Canadian affair. Toronto FC got his new hero. The Montreal Impact and their talisman." You know, I love Luke Wildman, I have to say.
Yeah. When Toronto FC needed a hero, Josie Altidore delivered is maybe his best call. Maybe not if you're not a TFC fan, but certainly that was the goal he scored against Columbus. But everyone thinks that was the call for the MLS Cup winner. It wasn't. It just a Josie Altidore, like the calls just kind of guttural when they win MLS Cup. But and Luke Wildman was there from the beginning for TFC. He was an employee for that club in the early days. He was the original PR director, and he was the PR director when that club was the terrible football club. So he's seen it all with them. So there you go, full measure to see it at the end. Look, it was a sexy performance. That's like, if you're a connoisseur of the game, and I think a lot of our listeners would fancy themselves as such, you gotta like watching a player like that. He is the perfect 10, and the perfect 10 is, I think, most people's vision of what the perfect footballer is. That's who we all kind of want to be in our minds. It's how we, maybe we can see it on FIFA sometimes, but I can't.
I see it in my dreams. My dreams, Football Manager too. I can. Well, playing my career in FIFA, yeah, Kevin Laramee is a player for Chelsea. One day it'll happen, Duane. I'm not giving out hope. One day I'll make the Chelsea squad. And I'm not old enough yet. I can be a goalie.
Someone pointed out, I mean, if you want to be Debbie Downer about this, it's like, what does a debut like that say about the quality of Major League Soccer as it relates to the European mid-level leagues? But
stop that.
He was doing that in Belgium too.
Yeah, it's stupid. Like, okay. Would we say the same thing when, example, golf players? When golf players come from Europe and play in the PGA, do we say, oh, yeah, but now he's facing tougher competition? It's the same game. Your teammates change. The size of the field, the play, and especially for Pozuelo, when he was playing in the Belgian league, it's like one of the two most similar leagues that we've tried to make comparison to is between Belgium and MLS. They're lots more similar than they are apart. And who cares about the level of the league? In the league itself, it's great. It doesn't matter if your players cannot do a Rabona. If not everyone on your squad can actually be good with the ball. Like, it's an ensemble. It's a cast of characters. It's not just one player. It always makes me mad because I feel like people are just trying to find excuses to not watch Major League Soccer or to not appreciate the soccer there is in their backyard. And it's easy to just be like, oh yeah, but I've watched a Chelsea game and I've watched the Man United game and those guys can do this, but when I'm watching this here, it's not the same. Of course it's not the same. It's two different leagues, two different teams, two different goals, two different mentality, two different setup. One has playoffs, one doesn't. One you get relegated, the other one you don't. And the only difference between all of those things is it's not the same environment. So why is there always someone in the room or on Twitter or someone be like, oh yeah, but the league is better, and it makes me so mad for, like, why? What's your goal? Do you just want to denigrate what you have? When you receive a Christmas gift, do you be like, oh yeah, but the one I received last year was better, or my friend's gift was better? No, you take it and you shut your mouth and you enjoy it. So how about you enjoy MLS?
There
Sorry.
You go. Good rant. That's fine. Well, here's the thing too. Alejandro Pozuelo he had one bad year for a bad Swansea team in the Premier League in 2013 when he was a kid. He's only 27 now. So think about that for a second. That was a terrible team.
And there was players like Michoud all ahead of him at Swansea at that point. He was one of the best players in the league. And of course, if you just watch the English Football League, you'll have a bad memory or barely a memory of Pozuelo because he was with Swansea. Like, oh man, sorry. Go ahead.
He went back and he invented himself in the Belgian league. And don't think for a second that he could not have found a move back to a Big Five league. I think he absolutely could have. Whether he could have got on the same money is a different question altogether, and he has made a decision financially for his life right now to bring his family and take care of his family for the rest of his life in Major League Soccer and give a nice lifestyle. He talked about the lifestyle of the city, and I don't mean to overstate that, but I do think, and that's not a Toronto thing, that's a North American thing.
Yeah.
That is a factor in all this, right? So this is all playing into it. Could he have been a bench player for a Ligue 1 team? 100%.
He would have
even
started
for
yeah. Like, come on, Ligue 1. We always talk about Ligue 1 as being it's like, just take Laurent Simon for a second. We're talking about Toronto. Let's just use Laurent Simon as an example. He mentioned that it was a mistake for him to go to Dijon, and he wished he could have taken it all back because, well, he thought he was going to help his football, help his game, and help his status with the national team and all those things. But, he wasn't able to play. It was really different. Not that he wasn't the level. It was different. And, Major League Soccer is it's the most overrated and underrated league at the same time. And I think Pozuelo will be a star here. And he could be a star almost in any team in the world outside maybe 5 teams. I think he's good enough. And he has the qualities, as Stephen Caldwell would say, he has the qualities to be a superstar in almost any league or any team in the world.
Yeah, no, he's not stepping into PSG or Manchester City or even Manchester United. He's a kind of a mid-level table player or a star in a league like Major League Soccer. That's fine. But in the context of what we saw out there, if you're getting full value for your ticket price out there, like we saw that chip live. That chip got played all over the world. I don't know if maybe Javinko's crazy goal in 2015 where he, that actually put Toronto in the playoffs for the first ever time when he beat 3 players on the dribble. That might be the only one that's as close. Or, well, obviously, Lacan's goal at BMO last year as well for an opposition player. But, that's a small handful of goals over the 12 years I've been going to that stadium that I can put up to that level. And it was just one of those, gasp moments. Patanka, too, as I said. The people in the crowd were just, shaking their head in disbelief when those things happen. And he got, 40 points in fantasy? That's in 72 minutes to play.
Yeah.
He didn't play a full damn game. And coming off a plane, right? With new teammates.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing. And let's continue. And by the way, of course, we're going to do the full weekend review. We're going to talk about the Montreal Impact in a second. We're going to talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps in a second, too. And then we'll look at the entire results of the weekend of Major League Soccer, week number 5 in MLS. But just to finish with Toronto, Duane, you mentioned Pozuelo. And for me, the biggest comment coming out of this game by Pozuelo leaves for a lot of hope for Toronto's this season. Of course, the first time in their history they got 3 games to start a season, 3 wins, 3 games, first time since 2009. But Pozuelo mentioned after the games, as soon as I got with the club and started playing with my teammates and practicing and exchanging the ball, I noticed that my teammates are good. I have really good teammates, and he's going to enjoy himself. And we think we saw it already. The chemistry with Osorio is there already, even though those 2 players have a totally different background, where they've played, the type of soccer, but their chemistry is there. The Altador and Pozuelo's chemistry obviously is there too, and it's all on Pozuelo. Pozuelo mentioned that he liked to set up people more than he likes to score goals, which is going to be mental if that's the case because he scored beautiful goals. But I think the link up to Bradley, to Pozuelo holding the ball, creating space, dribbling, making defenders wonder if he is a left or a right foot, because we still don't know. He's as good with both. So you make defenders wonder, and they question themselves. They don't know if you're going to put it to your left, to your right, and you set up Josie for that goal. You set up yourself with a nice little left-footed chip. I think we're going to see a spectacular season because of his confidence and because he's willing to work for his teammates. And sometimes big superstars come in Major League Soccer, and it takes them a year and a half to realize that they have to raise the level of their entire teammates if they want to be good enough. Remember Rooney? That's what Rooney did with DC. But with Pozuelo, it's a bit different. He's going to come here, he's going to use his teammates, and he's going to be good. No, I think Pozuelo is going to be maybe the best signing Toronto has ever done, and that's after 72 minutes of sample size.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we'll have to watch this play out. The load management, to use a term that gets thrown around in this city a lot right now. We're talking with the Raptors and Kawhi Leonard, but that's going to be something that has to be watched for him because he is coming off a full season. That is always a difficult adjustment. They are going to have to maybe rest him occasionally. But you can afford to do that. We're going to get to the impact in a minute, and we did suggest that they punt last week, and they took our advice.
Literally, they almost literally punt because they played football and lost by a touchdown. But we'll be right back with that.
Yeah. So it's kind of, they seriously might have to punt the odd game here. I'm looking at that schedule, that Seattle road trip. As much as you'd like to put a marker down against your old MLS Cup rivals in 2 weeks, you might go, you know what, we might rotate a little bit in that game. And if we drop the 3 points, we drop the 3 points because they're a Western Conference team, and that's sort of, you playing the long game in that particular case. But no, yeah, like I said, Pozuelo is so far so good, right? And You mentioned Osorio. Yep. That's, I think, as a Canadian national team fan, even if you're not a CFC fan, if you're a Canadian national team fan, you should be a little bit excited about him linking up with him and sort of giving him a little bit of insight. They're very similar aged players. Osorio obviously, came from lower levels than him and has sort of found his game in the last couple of years. I think Victor Vasquez helped Osorio out a great deal, and this is going to just be the next step as well. And the fact that he's walked in and is basically seeing him as a contemporary, as an equal, is a compliment to Jonathan Osorio's game. This is a guy that, came out of nowhere in 2013 to burst onto the scene and then sort of, was still a whipping boy for a lot of people in that stands. And I think that has a lot to do with his passport more than anything else, because Canadians do like to cut the tall poppies down.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, so lots of good things overall. They were purring on Friday night. We'll say it that. Who wasn't purring, Kevin?
Yeah. All right, let's get there. We're going to talk about it. 7-1. Kansas City lit up the Montreal Impact. We knew it was going to happen. No Piatti. Here's a story. We were about to see Novillo start for the first time for the Montreal Impact. The Frenchman who signed from Montreal. He played with Lyon when he was a kid. Yeah. He lost his passport. So when it was time to leave Montreal and to go to Kansas City, Novillo couldn't. And he stayed home. And he was supposed to be a starting 11 player, and he wasn't. So because of this, Tyder had to start up top. Well, not as a striker, but as one of the top three in the 4-3-3 formation. And Shamit Shom had to start in the midfield. So you put Tyder in a situation where he's not used to, and you put Shamit Shom in a position where he's not used to either, with a lot of more pressure and maybe playing. He did a decent game, and nothing was really his fault, but he was really mad after the game, and he threw his jersey after being subbed off, and then he wrote an apology to all the fans saying, I wasn't disrespecting the jersey or the badge or the city. I was just mad with emotion after getting scored 4 or 5 times at that moment. So no, the Montreal Impact did punt it. There was no Piatti. There was a lot of players missing. Novillo without his passport. Players traveling across the world to play for national teams, coming back really late and starting and not being 100%. We knew there was going to be a tough game, and we knew Montreal had to basically, okay, don't worry about this game. We're not going to win. We're not going to do well. But 7? Come on. You don't have to concede 7. Oh, it's like they stopped playing after the first half. And, in French, there's an expression that is coming from a comic long time ago in a French comic that usually goes like this. Like, yeah, the Impact were inactive on Saturday. Too bad there was a game.
That is kind of funny. It's very dry. 7's no. Like, I think you're saying to me off air that at least with 7, you can't ignore it. You've got to address it. Yeah. You have to meet it head on. I mean, this is, not to put it. There was one goal off of another famous scoreline in Canadian soccer history, which did have to get addressed, right? So it's my issue with that day, and this would be my issue as an Impact fan, is they lie down after a while, and there has to be some kind of pride. And you look at a case of someone losing their passport and stuff like that, and first off, I wonder why logistically the team couldn't figure that out, but maybe they didn't discover it till the last second.
They didn't discover it until the day of, and then what do you want to do? It's not like you can be like, you might be good at HR and making sure you know how to work with immigration, and you might have a contact at Immigration Canada or the passport office, but you can't invent a passport in 4 hours, especially when the guy's not Canadian. The guy's French. So he has to go to the French embassy. It's like, it becomes complicated, and just a few hours before, when you misplaced your passport and you're an international player and you have to go you're not traveling. You're going to be suspended. You're going to have repercussions from the club. There's going to be consequences, and Rémi Garde already mentioned that for Novillo, there'll be consequences for him losing his passport. It's called professional sports. They call a professional player, and losing your passport, guess what? It ain't professional.
No, I'm almost surprised that they don't keep the passports. The club don't keep them, but I guess that would be kind of indentured servitude at that point.
At that point, what's the difference between this and Qatar holding the passport of the migrants building the stadiums, basically making them slaves? So, yeah, if you hold the guy's passport, he's kind of your slave, so you can't really do that. But I understand your point. If the club has a passport, the club might not lose it or misplace it like the player.
Yes, precisely. But I mean, that's just one more comedy of errors in what was a very bad day for Montreal Impact. But look, I mean, the Whitecaps lost 6-0 to the same team last year, right? And
they're good. Like Kansas City's good. Like Nemeth, Russell, Johnny Russell duly impressed me. I did put him on my fantasy. The guy I didn't have on my fantasy is Nemeth, and the guy scored a hat trick, and it was full measure. And you know, Kansas City, with the pressure they put on you, with the slow but constant pressure, they'll battle for the field positioning. They'll battle for inches and inches and inches, and once they got you all backed up, they're gonna find ways to score. And we've seen this 7 times on Saturday against the Impact. And hey, at least you could say this. The Impact got the 1 goal to take the donut off. So at least Kansas City doesn't get the donut. Thank you. I had Milia in goal. So now I could have a great weekend in fantasy. But alas, I had not a bad weekend. I made like 101 points, which is not too bad. But yeah, fantasy. Join our league. But what do you want to say more, Duane? 7-1. It's like, forget about this game. Move on. The training is going to be difficult today. It's going to be hard. They're going to sweat a lot, and that's great. And you move forward. You look ahead of you. There's no, like, if this was my French show, which I'm going to do later on today, and I'm not going to put a football ramble type and just say, like, tabarnak for 2 minutes straight, and that'll be the show. But that's what it is. Like, it's almost not even worth it to rewatch that game. You just gotta take that emotion that you have, take the guilt or the shame that the players did feel. And you know, when you see players writing apologies on social media that are like 200 words long after this game because they feel ashamed, they feel guilty, and we'll see how they bounce back. And that's what impressed me. If the Impact bounces back next week and gets another win on the road, and they're 3-2 after 5 games on the road, hey, that's a success. Even 2 games right now, 2-2, 2-0-2 on the road, 6 points out of 4 games on the road. It's not bad at all. Like Montreal's 5th in the standings.
Yeah, I mean they're still, you know, that they lost by 6 goals and they're -4, so they were obviously having a positive influence before that. I think the only other thing to say about this game really is on the other side of the field. Kansas City put 7 in. And this is a team that is not built around a single focused striker. They are more of a team concept, and they're finding ways to score goals. They're finding ways to continue to evolve it. And, you know, Peter Vermees is not the sexiest coach in terms of, like, name recognition in this league, but he may be the best coach in this league consistently year after year after year, because that club does slightly reinvent itself all the time. And they're always in the mix. It's why you always pick them to win this cup, because they are always, you know, not any team is going to win 4 or 5 MLS Cups in a row in this league. This is not going to ever happen. We're watching it with Atlanta play out right in front of our eyes right now, how hard it is to repeat. You know, they could turn that around, but certainly it is an illustration, just like Toronto was last year, of the difficulty of that. But what is possible, and we saw this with SKC, and we see this with SKC now, we saw it with SLC, in, you know, years past, which they've fallen off since the management sort of moved there. But there are ways to stay consistently good in this league, and SKC does it year after year after year. And what is the commonality with that team, really?
Peter Vermees,
their technical director and their head coach.
Yeah, one of the best in the league, and I think it's going to continue. Now, let's just finish a quick Canadian review. Quick, it's been 25 minutes already, and we'll then talk about the rest of the league. By the way, sorry about that. By the way, that was a mixer here. By the way, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, Duane and I will take a little short break. I have to be out of town for a couple days, and I'll be back Thursday night. Friday, I will be back with a regular show, and Duane and I will try to get a 2 Solid 2s done for Friday as well, and we'll start to preview Canadian Premier League on Friday. Today, we're going to review the weekend, and 0-0, Vancouver-Seattle in Vancouver. That was actually a good performance by the Whitecaps to keep Seattle, one of the best teams in the league, to 0. Keep Jordan Morris, one of the players really hot this year so far, at 0. It's a great performance. Things are starting to turn around maybe with this performance. You can build on this performance if you're Marc Dos Santos. Defensively, Offensively, still need a lot of work, and maybe the presence of Laramee in the future, if it does happen, will help. But Vancouver 0, Seattle 0. I was actually happy for my Vancouver fans because, well, that's a good performance against a rival, in air quotes.
Yeah, Cascadia matchup, they obviously get up for those things. Look, 0-0 is never going to excite you, but if you're the Vancouver Whitecaps at this particular point of their evolution, and you are playing a team like the Seattle Sounders at this particular type part of their evolution, then you've got to take that and run. They get the point in there. I mean, realistically, the only thing that Vancouver might be competing for this year is that Cascadia Cup, which I know does matter to those fans. Not necessarily a competition that gets paid attention to much beyond Cascadia, but that's, what makes them tick is all that's important in this case. So, they get a point there. They stay in the mix for that. And, they continue to build. Mark DeSantos, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. Let's reverse that. And Mark DeSantis, hopefully for Whitecaps fans, he's here for a long time, not a good time right off the top, because it might not be.
Yeah, no, it might not be a good time all the time, but it'll be a long time. And before long, the team should be able to turn things around. They got money to spend, and it's just about how they eventually spend that money and use it for the benefit of the club in the long term and short term. And there's things that are going to change. But at least it's a result that is positive, and it's not a loss, and they didn't concede. So those are points you can build on if you're Vancouver. Now, let's take a look at the rest of the games in Major League Soccer this weekend. We've talked about Toronto winning 4-0 against NYCFC. What we didn't talk about is how bad NYCFC looked. We've talked about Pozuelo, Toronto, and how good they did look, Toronto. But what's going on with New York? And when I say New York, I mean New Jersey too, because NYCFC and the Red Bulls. Like, New York is blue. New York is red. Yeah, New York is shit.
Yeah, well, maybe. It's early days is what I'll say. And, the Red Bulls, I think the Red Bulls will get it figured out. I think maybe the Red Bulls are going through a bit of a... Okay, what's the story with... There's a commonality with the Red Bulls, with NYCFC, and with the other team that I mentioned a minute ago in Atlanta. All three of those teams lost major contributing players to their roster over the offseason. And for
a coach
some reason,
last year. And a coach, too.
Yeah.
I think it's not a mistake. I think it's not a coincidence, but sorry.
Yeah, look, I think that we all collectively, and when we were doing our preseason predictions, and I'm not just talking about you and I'm talking about the MLS community out there, underestimated how difficult it is to replace a guy of Tyler Adams' quality, a guy of Rollins' quality, and a guy of David Villa's quality, right? And all three of those players are missing from those rosters, and all three of those clubs are struggling right now. They do have the resources, and, it's not very long pedigree in those cases, in any of those cases, really. Well, the Red Bulls have been around for a while, but certainly there's enough history and enough resume in the past that you can say that they'll probably turn it around. But it's an illustration that you can't take a difference maker out of a team and expect them to just churn on year after year after year. The Red Bulls have been pretty good at it. They've lost players before, and they've managed to replace them. But Adams, as we're seeing in the Bundesliga, is kind of, for Pulisic, I think Adams might be the best player in the American pool right now. So that's saying something, and for him to lose that roster spot, and for New York to lose that roster spot, lose that key impact player in such a glue position, it's just difficult for them to overcome. But the NYCFC, they've lost their way. I mean, you look at the record since this Vieira left, they have been amongst the worst teams in the league. So
I think
something's wrong.
Yeah, they're like Orlando or something. But NYCFC lost to Toronto, and what got me thinking about this yesterday is looking at the Chicago Fire and the Red Bulls. Like, it's not like Chicago scored. It's an own goal. It's not like Chicago created a lot of pressure. They created a few chances. Chicago was trying, and they had the debut of Gaetan, their new player, in the second half. But the Red Bulls lost. It's not like Chicago won. It's the Red Bulls that lost that game on the road. And now you just lost at home to Orlando, and you lose on the road to Chicago. Those are not good looks. This does not reflect well on NYRB. And for me, the Red Bulls might be in for a long season if they cannot fix things really quickly. But losing to Orlando, yeah, Orlando's a bit better than we thought. And we saw this weekend too. But Chicago on top of it, yeah. what's going on with the Red Bulls? I think you nailed it when you mentioned the underestimation of replacing Tyler Adams and to the coaching staff and to make sure that it continues with Chris Armas and all those growth aspect that we don't necessarily see this year so far. And you cannot just leave this entire team up to Bradley Wright Phillips because he needs service too. So if they just suffocate the service, which has been the case, well, you're not having a good season so far. Speaking of... sorry, go ahead.
So I was just Bradley Wright Phillips too. That's the other question I'd have with them is that he eventually was going to fall off a cliff, just like we saw Wondolowski fall off a cliff. And really, Wondolowski's just sticking around to get the record down. As far as I can tell, that team is god awful.
That team is We'll get there.
So look, that's another factor I would play into this. There's a real divide this year so far between haves and have-nots in this league. And we're surprised at some of the have-nots, but certainly there has been sort of teams that are purring along, as I use the term of the day, purring, and teams that are just sputtering along. And I'm not. It's more divide than I'm used to seeing in Major League Soccer off the top. But it's April 1st, so pump the brakes a little on it. But
yeah, speaking of April Fools, New England 2, Minnesota 1. I was kind of shocked. I'm like, wow, New England won at home. But Minnesota tied that game, and they could have got a better result. There was a Darwin Quintero penalty. And the newly minted U.S. green card holder that doesn't count like an international player now, Darwin Quintero. We need to have this discussion one day, Duane. How Canadian clubs are disadvantaged with the green card aspect. Yeah, there's been like 25 players in the last month that got their green cards for U.S.-based teams. We don't have an equivalent here, so we're just like at a big disadvantage, and we'll talk about this one day probably. But New England 1, Minnesota 1. New England 2, Minnesota 1. Minnesota's getting a decent beginning of the season, better than last year, a bit better than anticipated, but maybe not as high as we thought. But New England finally getting a good result after a few weeks of being in limbo.
Well, New England needed something. They didn't look very good against Toronto. And certainly not very good in front of no one last week. Minnesota, look, they're mediocre, but after the first 2 years of Minnesota United, mediocre is fine for them. They just need to build off that and keep moving forward. They have some pieces at the back now that I think that they can build around, but I think that what we're seeing after a good start for them is kind of them finding their level. 1.5 points per game. That's the definition of mediocre. That is 500 soccer.
Yeah. Sporting Kansas City 7, Montreal Impact 1. We've talked about it enough already. Damn, I like San Jose 0, LAFC 5. You mentioned that the word of the day is the word of the day is tabernacling. So San Jose 0, LAFC 5. LAFC, Carlos Vela, my captain on my fantasy, 44 points. Thank you very much, Carlos. But yeah, LAFC continues to roll on, but I think it's not necessarily LAFC. I think it's San Jose. I think they're really bad. And it's funny, Alexi Lawless, I don't have the rant here, but Alexi Lawless mentioned yesterday and halftime of the LA Galaxy game, I believe. He mentioned San Jose and Matias Almeida, how Matias talks about having a plan for the long term, and he's looking 4 seasons ahead to be successful. This is Major League Soccer, Alexi Lawless was mentioning. It's a league with built-in parity, and you should be able to compete and get players, but you know what? You're the biggest star of your own team. That's where the problem is. You need more players. You need better players. And I think that's a good explanation of San Jose. How can the front office of San Jose hire a coach like Matias Almeida and not bring 11 players at the same time with him so he can have at least tools, at least some ammunitions? Right now, he's going to a war with a water gun.
Yeah, I think the idea would be he'd be able to find some players, and he got Chivas to play above their station. And they won the CCL as maybe the weakest Mexican team I've seen in the CCL for a while, but they did manage to get it done with a unique style and sort of getting more for less in that club. And I think maybe they thought that they might be able to get similar out of them there. But yeah, you need more pieces around them for sure. I mean, the natives are restless in San Jose too. I mean, they're getting salty tifos, and they were protesting the ownership, and it's just going to get uglier there for a while. I talked about it last week, how there's only been one club in MLS history finished with back-to-back seasons with less than 30 points. I think there's going to be 2 this year. That's San Jose. I would be pretty willing to bet that they will finish with less than 30 points.
13 you said, or 30? Anyways.
Well, yeah. That 13 with DC United. That's the record for lowest amount of points in the season. And they won the U.S. Open Cup that year, so go figure.
Go figure. FC Cincinnati 0, Philadelphia 2. FC Cincinnati could not get a third win in a row, but they did lose to Philly in Nippert Stadium. Philly, a good result, and maybe finally showing us how good they can be this year. Philly has a lot more ambition and expectations in 2019. Jim Curtin and his players did perform well this weekend on Saturday and did beat FC Cincinnati, the expansion team. But I'm going to bring you to this result here. Columbus 2, Atlanta United 0. Duane, do you know that a Frank DeBoer coached team in regular league play has not won since 2016? 9 games, 2 goals. It's insane the amount of bad performances of those teams. And Frank DeBoer is not having a good time right now. Columbus 2, Atlanta 0. It's going to get worse before it gets better, I think. And I don't know. Atlanta is another enigma so far after 5 weeks.
Well, Almiron. It's all about Almiron. That's why I picked him for. And the reason I picked the fourth and got a lot of flack from Atlanta fans because they would call me crazy and stupid and everything else because how dare I pick them below first. Well, you can't replace a player like that. And look, I was being a bit flippant with it, probably, but at the same time, it was an illustration in my mind that this was a club that was not going to roll like they did last year. It was very difficult to do that 2 years in a row, particularly when you're trying to replace a major piece. And the guy that they brought in, Pizzi Martinez, who came in with a lot of hype, and that was the other question I had about that team, was that just because you have a lot of hype coming from South America does not mean you're automatically going to roll in and succeed, because it is a difficult league to adjust to. And we're seeing it. Now, look, it's 4 games in. They have 30 games to turn this around. I suspect that they will. 90 points still on the table. They're probably going to make playoffs. But right now, to see them in last place is a stark reminder that MLS is going to MLS sometimes, and this is a case of it. And DeBoer, the question people have with this is when do you pull the trigger? And
do you wait till the end of the season, or do you just pull a RSL and fire your coach after? Well, you can't do 3 weeks because it's already week 5. But yeah. There's a few coaches out there that are talented, though. Even though it was announced that Jason Kreis would be working with the national team of the U.S. men's national team, there is some good coaches available out there. So yeah, we'll see if Frank DeBoer can actually stay in place.
Well, yeah, and look, there's research out there that suggests that if you're, I believe 7 games is the magic number that someone has identified through just looking at years of history, that if a team is underperforming after 7 games, the chances of them turning it around, like with a new manager, the chances of them turning it around are next to nothing. So the argument that they're making by showing this, statistical evaluation is that you might as well fire them after 7 games, because giving them more time, which is conventional sports thinking, it's too early, you can't panic, things like that, might not be accurate, right? This is the greatest thing about advanced numbers, is that they sort of, lay foolish all these notions we've had for years about sports, like defense wins championships. Not really.
Not really.
You got to score goals. And this is another one. Maybe they do pull the trigger, and maybe it changes. But of course, you have to have someone lined up for it. Yeah. And that's I was listening to. We'll give second reference to Rollins again today. I was listening to his podcast on the way in because I'm out of new podcasts to watch because that's all I did all weekend.
I was going to say your weekend was. It's a slim Monday morning here. We had to find what we can. Hi, Alexi. We do love you, and I'll take care of it.
Exactly. But he was talking about about that very thing. So it's how maybe you have to pull the trigger. Anyway, so Alexi Law's State of the Union. It's it's very American, is what I'll say.
Oh yeah, no, okay. So Duane, I never said that story on air, and it's April Fool's, and you talk about Alexi Lawless, and I'm gonna tell this story, and I don't think even you knows this. Okay, remember last year or a year and a half ago, we had Alexi Lawless on the show. I met him in 2017 in Chicago, and we exchanged numbers, and he said, "Yeah, come on your show, no problem." So. We organized the interview. I set him up, and in the morning of, I text him to be like, okay, perfect, we're all set up. And then I was with my new girlfriend at that moment. So I take my phone and I send to my girlfriend, "Have a nice day, love you," and everything. Press send. Oh, wait, I just sent that text to Alexi Lawless. Oh, no. So Alexi Lawless, and you can't delete the text message. It's sent. So I'm like, oh, my God. So I just...
Wrong phone. Wrong phone. Who did?
Yeah.
Or new phone. Who did?
I sent Alexi Lawless "Have a nice day. Love you, dear." And I'm actually happy that when we had him on the show, he didn't say anything about it. He didn't sell it, nothing. And I was so embarrassed. But yeah, this is my little Alexi Lawless story. Always be careful of who you're texting to. If you switched, just make sure you go back to the original page of your messages so you can choose the according name. But yeah, well, I actually do love you, Alexi, and I do wish you a nice day.
Yes, I get occasional grocery lists from Kevin, so it's fine. It happens sometimes. I'm sure I've sent you grocery lists too. I'm going to pick up pasta. That's nice. I'm in Montreal.
I've sent you "I love you too" as well, probably a few times. Like, "Hey, what's up?
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Kevin, you're trying to text your fiance.
Yep, like wrong person. Anyways, Alexi Lawless. All right, let's go back to the scores to finish the show today. Real Salt Lake 2. FC Dallas 4. Yeah, I was not expecting RSL to lose again. I thought they would have a reaction from the last couple of weeks. I didn't see it. FC Dallas, low-key, but doing better than anticipated. Luchi Rodriguez, the new manager of FC Dallas, is bringing back the idea of being an academy-heavy team that we saw with Oscar Pereira like a year and a half ago. Not that he strayed away from it, but because of injuries and because of the season that dictated not as many young players playing certain games, they kind of stayed away from this. But with Luchi Rodriguez and this performance as well, I'm kind of impressed by Dallas. Are they a top 2, top 3 teams in the West? I don't know, because LAFC and Kansas City are really firing on all cylinders. But FC Dallas, for sure, a playoff team for me, and another good performance for Dallas on the road.
Yeah, Dallas has been better than I anticipated. They changed a lot of that roster in the offseason. I think maybe they they sensed that there needed to be a flip of the roster, and that's a daring thing to do, particularly in the market. Well, maybe it's not as daring because there is no one that cares about the team in the market, and I say that diplomatically, and it's not entirely in their control because they don't really play in Dallas, do they?
No, they don't. They're Frisco is where they play.
Yeah, and it's an hour outside of Dallas, so it's difficult for them that way. But look, to flip the roster over that much and to have this much success early is, I think, testament to their program, and that's something I think a lot of people have loved about Dallas for years, and they continue to be very successful on the academy side. When you look at, the Generation Adidas Cups and things like that, they tend to excel in them and host it. So it's a testament again to promoting that. And look, they're talent rich down there, and they're taking full advantage of it. Do they think they're going to be a top team? I think Seattle and LA and Sporting Kansas City are a step above them. Although right now SKC is only at 1.75 points per game, and they're at 2, so we'll see. But they're definitely in strong for like that mid-range playoff spot right now, I would have to say. RSL's the other side of this. They're a team that's lost. They have been. I mean, they were identified as plucky underdogs that got the most out of the ultimate MLS 2.0 team in many ways. They didn't really go with the big DP. They had Carl Beckerman, who was kind of a quasi-DP. He might have been the DP status for a few years, but now that I'm surprised he's still playing. I think he was in Toronto FC's first season he started, so he's been around a while. They lack that identity, and they lack the ability to draw, and they have a residency academy down there because they have to bring everyone in. They just don't have the resources that Houston or Dallas would. I don't know why I say Houston. That's why, because they're above them in the standings right now, and Houston's maybe been the surprise early on in the West. It's a problem down there. But there's, like I said, divide. There's a clear divide. No, Vancouver and San Jose, I think, and Colorado, and RSL for that matter, I think already you're looking at those 4 teams. They're scrambling to get anywhere close to that line. LA has been playing better than we expect, so that they seem to be solidly in the playoffs. As I said, Minnesota is a 500 team. Portland's the only team below the line right now that I would have any confidence could drag itself above. And I don't know who it's an expense to. Maybe Minnesota. I think they might be battling with Minnesota for that final spot. Portland right now, based on their slow start. 6 points behind already. That matters.
Yeah, 6 points after MLS. 5 weeks. Yeah, it's a lot. But you mentioned Houston. They did perform well again, 4-1. And I think the performance of Houston, their performance in the CCL, which was better than anticipated. And I think their reaction here in league and the way that Wilmer Cabrera is building this team, it wasn't just Kubo, but Kyoto this time. It is really the spark plug of this team, and I think we're going to see a good season, and Houston could be in the playoff if they continue to play this way. And Vancouver, Seattle, 0-0. I was mentioning the games on Sunday, a DC United win on the road in Orlando. Wayne Rooney with a quasi-Olympico off a free kick and not off a corner, but it was a corner. It was a free kick that was similar to a corner, and it was maybe 3-4 yards more closer to the front of the net and a bit more to the left of the net. Anyways, and we've seen a nice goal. It looked like a cross. And boom, it's in the net, and it's 2-1 on DC United versus Orlando. 2 goals on set pieces. Orlando did play better than the scoreline would indicate, but set pieces and Wayne Rooney goes together in Major League Soccer, and they can be very influential on results in MLS. And we have seen this in this game. DC United, Orlando, 2-1 DC.
And, of course, some controversy around Dom Dwyer coming in really high on Rooney. Rooney jumped out of the way, basically accused him of trying to injure him. Yeah.
Well, Dom Dwyer is really not making a lot of friends across the league this year so far. With his antics against Montreal the week before and how he reacted with Diallo. Okay, this is going to be a very meta hockey reference, but I'm going to try to find the equivalent for soccer too. Okay, Dom Dwyer is Sean Avery. This is like a Canadian reference of an American hockey player, or that's like a goon or an agitator. So basically, when you look, I'm going to use a basketball reference. Dom Dwyer is Boogie Cousins if Boogie Cousins had the talent of Steph Curry. Like, he should stop trying to get into people's head and trying to play the gamesmanship. And how about you just play the game and be as good as we think you are? Because Dwyer should be scoring almost a goal a game. And that's how good he is. And I think he has to get back to thinking about soccer and not thinking about, I guess, tackles or like physical aspect or getting into someone's head or yelling at people. How about you kick the ball instead?
I'll give you an MLS reference. Steven Lenhart. I don't know if you remember Steven Lenhart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Goonies never die.
Yeah. I'm going to say this diplomatically. Dom Dwyer is not the deepest human being that's ever existed, I don't think. So
he's not a nice guy. Let's be fair. I've had the chance to see him evolve in front of me with media and other players a few times in Montreal All-Star Game. Didn't seem like a nice human being. Didn't seem like he was creating good rapport with his peers. Let's just put it this way.
Yeah, he's yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. LA Galaxy 2, Portland 1. We almost saw a Zlatan hat trick. He almost biked a third goal after his 2 penalties goal, but LA Galaxy 2, Portland 1. Portland might have deserved better, but you concede 2 penalties on the road. You're not going to win games, and they didn't win that one. It's not going well for Portland. LA Galaxy 2. The Timbers, finalists of MLS Cup 2018, are not doing well so far, and it's another loss for Portland.
The 2 teams that played in the MLS Cup final last year have 3 points combined. I mean, that's the league in a nutshell. Portland's on that big, long road trip to start the season as they renovate the stadium. We've seen other teams survive it. Toronto a few years ago in their championship year, it started with a lot of games on the road. It can be done, but Montreal's doing it right now, and that's why we keep trying to put that caveat on the Impact season. We're talking about their start. It's like 6 points is fine. Some of one's not, but 6 points is fine right now. And as you said earlier, if they can recover from that, then that's an advantage. But Portland, that's the key to these big road trips to start with. You can't get buried, and they're in danger of getting buried already. As I said earlier, they're only 5 points out of the playoffs, not 6. They're 6 behind SKC, but still 5 is 2 games. And MLS is such a tight league that you just can't afford to fall much further behind that. If they get, like we've seen Seattle do it a couple times in a row, maybe they could turn around. They'll have a lot of home games in the back half of the season, obviously. But still, you do not want to put yourself in that position, because even if you do drag yourself back to the playoffs, we keep bringing up the Seattle, back-to-back years where they dragged their ass back in after being way out and, won MLS Cup the one year and came one game away from it the second year. The reason we bring that up is because it's so unique. It doesn't happen. And one of the reasons it doesn't happen is because you have to expel so much energy to get back into the playoffs that by the time the playoffs hit, usually you're done. And that's, the problem that Portland might be facing right now. Although there's talent on that team. Up year, down year, up year, down year, up year, down year. There's a trend with them, and it's a down year. It's supposed to be. They're on schedule for this.
Yeah, even with great talent, it does need an ensemble, and you do still need like the luck aspect. But I wouldn't be surprised if Portland gets on a roll in a few weeks' times and do well until the end of the season. But it's the idea: will they run out of steam just 1 week or two after the end of the season, and then pewter out the playoffs like DC United last year? Because that's what happened to DC last year. They were so hot in the last 15 games, but second game of the playoffs had nothing left in the tank.
Yeah, luckily they're in with arguably the worst team in MLS history below them. So that's, the one thing that might keep them off the bottom. Matt Doyle said that they calculated that they're on pace to give up 118 goals or some damn thing. Minus 12, 2 goals, 14. Well, you want to be really scared about the Earthquakes right now? They've played 3 home games already, and they've lost all 3. So it's not looking good there.
The Portland fans and Portland playing bad, like, we're the worst team in the league. San Jose saying, hold my beer. Hold my beer,
yeah.
Hold my beer in the largest bar in North America. All right.
Yeah.
That was the weekend review.
It's sorry. Yeah, fair enough. They're going to have to, I don't know what San Jose's answer is. They've been invisible since they came back in the league.
Fold the team. Yeah. Change the name. Put some players in there. Yeah, a lot of things.
Rebranding. They have a nice stadium, too, so they've done everything they can. The only thing they haven't done is rebrand. I'm not sure they'd be okay with a rebrand because that's an historic name. Well, they were what the hell was their original name?
Well, they were the Earthquakes. They were the Earthquakes, and I guess now they're just the Quakes. So
they're still listed as Earthquakes on the website.
I know,
they were called something else, the Clash or some damn thing back in the early days. Like we're talking 96.
It was a San Jose. I think it was a Clash actually. Well, it'll be fascinating. I hope you enjoyed the weekend review. I hope you enjoyed it more than the Montreal Impact SKC game, which was not fun to watch for me. And I'm never going to talk about it again. I'm never going to speak of it again. 7-1, it never happened. The future is ahead. The past is just long gone. And speaking of the future ahead, Duane and I will take a few days off. We'll be back with a brand new show on Friday. Make sure you follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramee. We'll give you our thoughts on the news of the day if it happens on social media. And if there's something really big happening, I'll find a way to get you our opinions on social media before the next show, which will be Friday at 11 a.m. We'll preview the next weekend. We'll have a Two Soccer podcast by the end of the week as well, where we preview the Canadian Premier League. Duane, we're in the same month right now at the debut of the Canadian Premier League. We're only 26 days away. Finally.
Yeah, and you can expect some material to like a full preview of each of those teams. We'll do obviously a full Two Solitudes preview show. We might even be nice and release that one.
Yeah,
at least partially.
Yeah, and Thursday the kits are out, so we're probably gonna wait until Friday so we can do a little show, and maybe I'll do a video show here and a little fashion show where we go through the 14 kits of Canadian Premier League and identify the one we love the most. So.
Fair enough.
And until then, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kevin Laramee. We wish you a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.